Was contained in the nationally broadcast funeral of a civil rights icon. Yesterday, we asked here how long until the backlash accusing liberals of disparaging the memory of Coretta Scott King. Our fourth story in the countdown tonight, the president forced to pretty much sit there and take it. To his credit, he seemed largely unfazed. The White House made no comment. If you missed the original comments, highlights please.
She extended Martin's message against poverty, racism, and war. She deplored the terror inflicted by our smart bums on missions way afar. We know now there were no weapons of mass destruction over there. But Coretta knew, and we know, that there are weapons of misdirection right down here.
It was difficult for them, personally, with the civil liberties of both husband and wife violated as they became the targets of secret government wiretapping, other surveillance.
The criticism of the criticism largely taking three different tacks. One, that Dr. Lowery was wrong. Two, that the venue was inappropriate. Three, a la Rush Limbaugh, that something similar had happened at the funeral of the Democratic Senator Paul Wellstone in 2002.
We already had our Brokeback Mountain moment when President Bush hugged Bishop Eddie and gave him a peck on the cheek, and now it has gone Wellstone. The Reverend Joseph Lowery, is he Reverend? Yeah, the guy is. Reverend Joseph Lowery, just in his eulogy, had to mention the fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction.
As for the best of the rest, the conservative columnist Michelle Malkin saying it all in two short sentences taken from her website, quote, "The Democrats just can't refrain themselves, absolutely ungodly." So if things had, say, gone differently in New Orleans, and somebody yesterday had praised the administration's response on behalf of the African Americans there, we're assuming Ms. Malkin would have called that ungodly as well. The Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowery co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference with Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He has been kind enough to join us now by phone from Atlanta. Dr. Lowery, thank you for your time. Good evening.
Well, thank you. Good to be with you.
Let me begin by asking you, did you expect the kind of fallout we've been hearing today?
No, I think the fallout's coming mostly from people who are not familiar with our tradition of celebration of a life that's transitioned. I was addressing the life and ministry of Coretta Scott King, and it just so happened that it involved public policy of this administration, and it just so happened the president was there. You can't tailor your message that you feel inspired to give depending on who's not going to be in attendance. Her life was one that was spent fighting for peace and fighting for racial justice and fighting for the Dr. King's three-pronged agenda when he talked about at the Riverside Church a year before he died, the materialism and war, and he passed that mantle on, and Mrs. King wore it magnificently, and so I'm sure the president felt that he couldn't come to a funeral of a civil rights icon and not hear issues involving civil rights and peace.
But apparently, sir, somebody who spoke there yesterday might disagree with you. Let me read what the former UN Ambassador Andrew Young said. Martin Luther King or Coretta King would not have done it. They were far more gracious. That's the reason they were successful. I have a two-part question for you in response to that. One, do you agree with what Ambassador Young said there, that they would not have done it? And two, to your knowledge, were the children of the Kings upset by this in any way?
I have no idea. You have to talk with them. I've disagreed with Andy Young on many occasions. One, when he said he didn't give a damn about the Confederate flag being our state flag, and another when he hangs out with Clarence Summers and holds him up as an example for our young people. He's a good friend of mine, and I love him. But I've disagreed with him before and disagree with him now. I respect his right to his opinion. I don't know how clairvoyant he is. He can tell what some other people who are not here to speak for themselves might have done. But I'm comfortable in my position that as a preacher of the gospel and in the tradition of our funerals, I celebrated her life, and she did carry the mantle of nonviolence and anti-war sentiment. She did call for remedies for the poor, for the plight of the poor, and she did call for an end to racial injustice. So I'm comfortable that I did the right thing, and I hope nobody was offended. Didn't mean to offend anybody. If I disagree with the president's policy, I think that's my right. It's nothing against him personally. I shook hands with him, and we embraced with him and his lovely wife, Mrs. Bush, following that.
To your knowledge, sir, was Dr. King ever in the kind of position that you were in yesterday? Did he ever eulogize a friend, a loved one, a civil rights leader, and introduce the political topics of the day?
I don't recall. I don't really eulogize a civil rights leader or not. I don't recall, but I do know that his life was spent fighting war and fighting racial injustice and trying to alleviate the burden of poverty. And so I'm comfortable that I spoke in the context of his ministry, his leadership, and of mine. As head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference for almost 21 years, I'm comfortable. I spoke out of that discipline, and I thank God for the inspiration and meant to offend no one. I can't imagine the president could come and think he wouldn't hear something about peace and civil rights.
The Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowery, great thanks for taking the time to speak with us tonight.
Thank you.